In this session, we will explore 3 different units that I use to make meaningful connections between students and essential theater content. You will receive all of my assignments, my lesson plans, and materials, along with links to presentations, tests, and quizzes, which are a total of 10 weeks of unit lessons. And then towards the end, we'll have some time to discuss experiences and approaches to these selected lessons and units. Of course, everything that we do in Klein revolves around our guiding documents, the profiles of high quality teaching, the profile of a learner, and the profile of a leader. But what I like to think is that these profiles are the results of what really is at the core of this plan. So if you look in the center of this document, we have cultivating talent, we have reimagining learning, and we have building community. I feel like if you begin with this in mind, it leads to the result of a leader, it leads to a learner, and it leads to high quality teaching. We've got the 4 tenets of personalized learning. In Klein, we try to instruct with competency-based progression, personal learning paths, flexible learning environments, and learner profiles. Us as fine arts educators, we tend to check these boxes more frequently and at a better success rate than some of the academic teachers, based off of what we are expected to produce. And last but not least, the social and emotional learning competencies, which we were introduced to not too long ago. Again, we check these boxes with how we have our students collaborate, but I will show you throughout these example lessons how and where they fit. This session supports the following PL tenets. We'll focus on flexible learning environments, interest-based learning, and learning style-based groupings, competency-based progression, and personalized learning paths. When I teach, I structure my lessons focused on what the individual student will experience through the lesson versus what I want the student to learn. I can't promise that every student will learn and master every one of my units, but I do promise that the progress that they make in my class will make them more confident and a better collaborator. That's what really drives me to present and how I teach my lessons. So starting off right off the bat with my unit on Welcome to Stagecraft. So I don't assume that my students know how to be a student, no matter if they are an incoming freshman or a senior. And I certainly don't assume that they know how to be my student. I use this time to create a foundation that will ignite curiosity and investment in school while schedules are still fluid. So before I can get them to learn theater content, I want to make them excited about being a student. Even if I don't see them the next day, they will learn something that will empower them as a student to take to whatever class they move to. So I start off with a type of learner quiz, which really breaks down the individual. They take a quiz and they find out if they're a visual, an audible, or a kinesthetic learner. They take a student questionnaire, which at this time in this climate, I think giving the students the opportunity to share with you their circumstances is very important. Seeking first to understand, then to be understood, and creating empathy for individuals. Something else that I do is a promise to purpose goal setting. I give an index card to each of my students and I have them write down a promise to themselves and what they want their purpose to be for the school year. And this is the beginnings of having them start to think about themselves as an empowered being to keep commitments to themselves and to reach for goals. I also, during open house, give parents the opportunity and the option to leave their kids a personalized note for maybe a day that they're having a rough day and need a little pick-me-up. If I'm not ever able to get through to my student, I have something that is maybe a little more personalized and personal to them to give them that little pick-me-up. Those also feed into moving our students from the basic needs and the hierarchy, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, moving them into starting to see safety and security, to the environment where they belong and are loved, and helping the self-esteem, and then actually having them learning content. Again, this welcome unit focuses on self-awareness, responsible decision-making, and self-management. Now, this section here, Miss Segura will find, she actually showed me this, and I used it this year and fell in love with it and want to share it. So once students are more consistent, schedules are more consistent, I establish my classroom expectations. I go over my core syllabus and create a family between each period. Each class period gets to vote on a team name. They get their own remind group and are now competing against each other for an end of the semester festival of Dionysus. Now that also sparks interest in what is a festival of Dionysus? Who is Dionysus to theater? This is a reward of some kind before the semester exam. You can make it up. If you're allowed to exempt a class, you can do so. My reward was either pizza or donuts for the entire class before our exam. The class period with the most amount of points at the end of the semester attends the Festival of Dionysus. Points really do help establish understanding of rewards and consequences, and they motivate students to self-monitor and to hold each other accountable. If you look at the photo that I have taken of my classroom whiteboard, you see that each class has got a name. Period the second got me every time. Every unit test that I did, I posted the averages, so you can see when I did types of stages how my class periods did, tools, jobs. I reward every class period depending on where they ranked. The most amount of points that they could receive were 40 because there were 4 teams, and the least amount of points they could receive were 10. So I was praising each class period for their progression at the same time as having them compete individually for points for a #1 spot. This also got students to come to my class early because my board where this was located was on the complete opposite side of the door to my room. So students would just bolt in, run to the other side to see how they landed in the leaderboard. I recommend doing this, especially now with Klein pushing remind groups for every period. It's slightly, process have been started for us, but this is an amazing way to keep students accountable. Even on days where I wasn't present, the students were able to self-monitor and hold each other accountable so they didn't lose points by treating the sub in a less than desirable way. The second unit that I use is over technical roles. It is a 4-week unit covering the play production process in a role play style setup. So we begin, just like with every unit, with an introduction presentation with follow-along notes, and then a vocabulary matching relay race on the stage, just to introduce us to the names, what we're going to be actually doing with this material. After we understand the hierarchy of jobs and positions, I will then introduce myself as the producer and director, and I will tell the class that I have hired this class period of students to become technicians for my production. I will then have students complete a survey ranking their interests in each technical area, 1 through 5, and they will then be broken into 5 different interest-based learning communities based off of their results. The objective is to learn the play production process from the page to the stage, and we will all be doing this together, but each group will be approaching it from an area that they got to choose and own. This checks the self-awareness, social awareness, relationship skills, and the self-management portion of the SEL competencies. Um, the 5 areas that I break up the class into are set, props, costumes, hair and makeup, and stage management. We read the play that I have selected, knowing that we will have to create a model for it in 3 weeks. This helps engage the students to literature and know that we're doing more than just reading a play. We're understanding the plot, the characters, and we will do something with it. We take the next 3 weeks to learn how to create a concept, a written statement based off of the play, turn that into a visual rendering, and then complete a model before it is actually produced. And just like in the working world, each step must be approved by the producer and director using textual evidence. So that's part of the role-playing style setup. Each team is to choose, they have a few different requirements on how many renderings they must create for how many characters or locations, but at the end, each will choose and they will have to create a model of some sort. The models will be made from found objects. If you've heard of the project Trash and Fashion, you use recycled materials or found objects, so you're not using actual fabrics or lumber. The presentation day is called the production meeting, as it is, in the real play production process. Each team shares their model and describes how this supports the script and the production. In the end, all presentations and models will show one complete production from the point of view of every of those 5 technical elements. The students will be able to see how each technical element needs cohesion in order to tell the story. And this checks all 5 of the SEL competencies: self-awareness, social awareness, responsible decision-making, relationship skills, and self-management. Here are some examples. This column is a concept storyboard from one young lady, and these are 2 and then a different presentation, but you can see that the character of Angel, based off of the hair and makeup and the description as to why, should somehow be cohesive with the costume presentation of a concept that was created from a complete different student. Same with the man with the scar tissue, a little more grunge, beat up, obviously, with the scar tissue. And does it match what the other student was able to see in the text as far as the costume? I've got an example of a written concept statement, and then some examples of visuals on a lighting design that was presented by my students. I have them work collaboratively, creating Google Slides with a certain requirement that they are responsible for. So each person has a task, and one person can't, just get stuck with the entire project. And I do this, I take 4 weeks to go very slowly so that they learn how to write a concept. They learn how to add visuals for the rendering. They learn how to draw and sketch a rendering, and then they learn how to create something, a model. This takes the role of the student and turns it into a collaborator, a decision maker, a planner with times and materials, which leads to the profile of a learner. And this turns the role of the teacher into a facilitator, a mentor, and be able to assess the class atmosphere. And this again checks off all 5 of the social and emotional learning competencies. I will be honest, it will be hectic at first. You will have 5 teams running with needs at the same time. But once they get used to you being a facilitator, they will start answering their own questions, and they start to manage themselves in a way where they know they cannot be dependent on your time, mostly.
Do you, um, so there's one person in each group that's doing costumes or whatever, or is it how's the group structured?
So they are broken up into like a costume team.
Oh, okay, so everybody in the group is doing costumes.
Yes. And
Oh,
based
okay.
on the number of students, I try not to have more than 4 in a group. And if there are more interested, then I make 2 costume teams. And then
Right.
each member is then responsible for a character or a scene from the play. And then as a group, they choose which one to actually collaborate and create a model for together.
My second question was, are they all doing the same show?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So we can read it together as a class. And so at the end, you have physical models for each of the technical areas. Last year, I chose a random script that I thought would be relatable to my class. It was Marisol, and it had English and Spanish, so I thought it was a good jumpstart to get my class interested. This year, I wanted to make it our fall production script so that by the time it was actually produced, my students would have already read the script, spent 4 weeks on dissecting technical elements, and they could even take it one step further and see it be performed. Um, so that's how I would like to, get back to developing this lesson. The third unit that I use is probably one of my favorite units to do, hands down. It is a 2-week product-based unit covering the purpose and effective use of sound. So we'll figure out how to edit sound. The students use Audacity sound editing software, and these are on each of the Klein ISD Chromebooks, which is really nice. We reinforce the role and responsibilities of a designer, the creation of a written concept statement, a rendering, and then a sample. We start to introduce mood and intention and how a designer can create mood for the audience and the show. And the objective is to learn how to use sound editing software. We start together as a class, but then we branch out and give choice and start introducing personality so that students can own their assignments and projects. The first week is over just sound editing software, only Audacity. I take them through an introductory presentation with follow along notes. I've got some sound in the theater ed puzzles that really breaks down the roles and the technicians within sound. I take them through a guided walkthrough through the Audacity software. We spend a day really just going slow and dissecting how to use Audacity. And this is a snippet of the kind of tangible note taking that my students have in order to reference later on what some of the functions mean. I then walk them through the website that I use, which is freesound.org. I take them through creating a profile, how to download sounds, and how to save them in a place where they can find them later. And then I introduce them into a project, which is called the Weather Soundscape Project. And what that project is when I take them through freesound.org, I asked them to download some sounds that we're all going to use together. But then I start to introduce some choice where they can download some of their own options. You can see here, this is the handout that I give. The objective is for the student to tell a story of someone walking to a door or a window, opening it, listening outside, hearing something that motivates the person to close the door and walk away. So using Audacity, they must, and freesound.org, they must find these sounds. They will learn how to edit them, put them together, and create one MP3 file telling a complete story with a beginning, a middle, and an end. I've listed the sounds that are needed. 5 of them everybody will have, but as you can see, the ones with these blanks, they can choose 2 to give their sound personality and variation, interpretation. And here I've put them in a grid so students can check when they have downloaded each sound, when they have imported each sound, and before turning it in, they can check off when they've heard that sound just to make sure that it's in their final project. And this is an example of one of those projects. There we go. So you could see the students learned how to fade in and fade out sounds so that they come in and tell a very clear and detailed story. They are then left with these resources that they can use to build a portfolio to show the understanding of applications and software that working technicians use in their everyday life. This checks off the social awareness, responsible decision-making, and self-management, social and emotional learning competencies. Once they are familiar with editing software, we take it and we start to make it a little more theatrical. Week 2 is over Foley and creating sounds live. The students are broken up into teams, and each team is given a 30 to 45-second clip of a random activity like a sailboat on a lake, of someone cutting bell peppers, of a campfire, or walking on a rainy street. These sounds, however, have had this sound removed and are silent. And it is now the job of the students to re-engineer a soundscape to fit that video. Students begin watching the clip silently to understand what sounds need to tell the story. Now, based on your virtual or in-class instruction, there are 2 ways that you could possibly do this. You spend the week offering the students to record their Foley sounds. They edit it in Audacity, create an MP3, and play it at the same time as you play their video to match. Or you use the week to break out your kids into the Zoom breakout rooms, and you have them rehearse, and you bring them all back to perform at the same time in front of their class. And I actually was able to effectively do this with my drama club this week, and it turned out really well. When everybody came back, I had everybody mute their microphones unless they were performing. And then I actually had them turn off their cameras, so they only were able to see the video that I was sharing with the class, and we only got to hear the sound that was coming from the Foley artists. And then once we discussed the effectiveness of it, we had the students turn on their cameras, and we were actually able to see them, rub their hands together to make a certain sound or click something. We got to see them use their materials to give sound back to that video. That presentation day I called the mini film festival, and the students were engaged in giving critiques and effective feedback. This is a clip of a screenshot of the rubric that I use personally to assess effective use. And then over here is the student critique form. They follow along with each presentation. Each presentation has a different name, so they put the name. They look for a clear establishment of ambiance. They get to, rank it. Clear establishment of mood, and a clear establishment of action. And then each student is to give one comment about the video that is not opinion based. It's got to be constructive, and it helps students come up with a good way of creating good reflections. This unit, again, checks off the self-awareness, social awareness, the responsible decision-making, relationship skills, and self-management competencies, which in the end creates a classroom environment that is led with student-led instruction. It's a safe space for risk-taking. It is progress-based growth, and more importantly, result-based success. And it creates a culture of active empathy and collaboration. And all of these things really do result in the profile of a learner and the profile of high quality teaching. In conclusion, when structuring your lessons, think of the process and how you can reach different learners instead of getting them to the end of one objective. This will help alleviate some stress and pressure off of you, and it will make it more approachable to your students. Remember to use flexible learning environments. Use interest-based and learning style-based groupings as much as you can. Competency-based progression, so a balance of asynchronous and synchronous work. Create personalized learning paths, having the same end goal as your objective, but giving options on how students can get there. Offering choice allows the student to approach your lesson from a place that is relatable, cultivates talent, it reimagines their learning, and builds community. I'd like to share with you an example of another project that a student made. We were learning backstage terms, and one of the options was to either create a PowerPoint with 26 terms and pictures, a storyboard that they could draw, or something completely different like create a song. And I had one student take me up on that offer, and they actually created a song using backstage terminology. So I'd like to share that with you guys.
We got those backstage terms. We got those terms so we can learn. Got those backstage terms. We got the terms so we can learn. And agree until they finally call my name. On the offstage slide area, I'm standing on the wing. Call me to the scene shop with the decorative and hand props. I can't stop, I won't stop. Heads up, everyone looks up. I head to the house where the audience sit. That's where I'm hanging out. On, off, in, out. Hearing these things, I have no idea what they're talking about. Well, they move a scenic unit for the audience's view. That's what they gotta do. Oh man, they're in my sight line. Well, let's move like a traveler and stop wasting time. Walking on the catwalk where the lights are focused. Then I hear it fly and boom, hocus pocus. I couldn't believe my eyes. The scenery raised into the fly log. All atrocious. Got this backstage terms. Got this terms so we can learn. Got this backstage terms. Got this terms so we can learn.
So you guys get the point, but I knew this student had a really big interest in creating music. So I challenged him every single time that I could to create something for me and for him that would connect his interests with whatever I was trying to get him to learn. And giving students choice and options, they will always take you up on their, to share with you their abilities to create, especially with these TikToks and with these, everybody's creating content now. So all you have to do is say, and there's an other option, and they will come up for it. They will come up with it for you most times. Are there any questions? Anything that I can further give detail to? I thank you all for being here. I know something got messed up with the links, but if you would like the materials, Edith, you can come to my website